Hello, friends. The 828th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. Friends, due to renewed problems with electricity, as well as expert forecasts that this situation will only get worse, I ask for your help to purchase a charging station with solar panels. With its help, I can be more autonomous and not depend on power outages. You will find collection links under the video and in the pinned comment. Thanks in advance to everyone who responded to my call for help. Let's start with the main topic of what it means and what the consequences will be of permission to strike Russia with Western weapons. A series of statements by Western countries that they allow strikes with their weapons on Russian territory are only partly caused by military necessity. Although the use, for example, of HIMARS missiles with a range of up to 80 kilometers in the border areas of the Belgorod region or air defense systems supplied by the West to destroy aircraft over Russia will certainly have a certain significance for the course of military operations, it does not correspond to the scale of the resonance of the discussion of this topic. And even more so, permission from the Czech Republic or Poland to strike with their weapons will change little. For those who don't know, Czech Vampire multiple launch rocket systems regularly fired at the Belgorod region before. A truly serious, although also not decisive, influence could be exerted by permission to strike with long-range missiles, but this does not exist yet. Therefore, at this stage, the promotion of this topic in the West solves not so much military, but rather informational and political problems. The first task is to show the constancy of support for Ukraine, to maintain morale and faith in victory in Ukrainian society in a difficult situation at the front. The second task is to arouse the indignation of angry patriots in Russia by the fact that Putin does not react to crossing red lines and try to stop the situation inside Russia. The third task is to give a warning signal to Russia so that it does not expand the front line by attacking the Sumy region or Kiev. Western media write that permission to use weapons could expand if Russia tries to attack in new directions. By the way, yesterday the first deputy head of the Belarusian Ministry of Emergency Situations made a statement that the Gomel region of Belarus bordering Ukraine is ready to be transferred to wartime. The fourth task is to show the wavering forces in the West that Russia's threats are not worth fearing, which means we can move on step by step. For example, give permission to strike Russian territory with long-range missiles, convince Skals to give the Taurus, increase and speed up the supply of aircraft, then introduce a no-fly zone over western Ukraine, then send NATO troops, and so on. The last task is the main one for the so-called War Party. She has been saying for a long time that there is no need to be afraid of Russia's nuclear threats and Moscow's red lines, but that we need to be involved to the maximum, even to the point of sending troops. This party proves that Putin will not dare to launch a nuclear strike. But Russia has its own war party, which calls for moving from words to deeds, presenting an ultimatum to the West with the threat of using nuclear weapons. Or use it demonstratively in Ukraine or even in one of the European countries in order to show the seriousness of intentions, and then set conditions for the West, believing that the United States and the European Union, fearing a nuclear war, will agree to an agreement with Russia. In other words, this is the Caribbean Crisis 2.0. The party has been demanding this for a long time. Corresponding statements on the topic where our red lines are made regularly. By the way, anyone who doesn't know what the Caribbean crisis is, I highly recommend reading about it and comparing it with what's happening today. The permission to strike Russia with Western weapons, as well as other subsequent steps to increase the involvement of NATO countries in the war, provides supporters of the Russian War Party with new arguments. Perhaps they will not immediately influence the Kremlin's decision-making, but with each new step this probability will increase. Moreover, Putin and Medvedev regularly make it clear that the nuclear option is possible. The key problem is that both the War Party in Russia and the war party in the West are based on premises that may turn out to be false. The war party in the West believes that Putin will not dare to use nuclear weapons in response to NATO's increased involvement in the war. The war party in Russia believes that the West will not decide on a nuclear war, and therefore, if it is threatened, after an ultimatum or a demonstrative nuclear strike, it will agree with Moscow. However, both of these assumptions may not come true, and a real nuclear war will begin with catastrophic consequences for humanity. Whether all parties have enough intelligence and political will to stop in the near future is the main question. Why am I even saying this? Let me remind you that I returned from Poland to Ukraine a month before the Russian invasion. At that time, I hoped that politicians would have enough common sense, but as we see, the war has been going on for 3 years now. I don't want to force the issue, but if I were my European friends, I would now monitor what is happening in Ukraine as closely as possible, because the likelihood of waking up to the sound of explosions is not at all illusory. Let's move on to a review of the situation on the fronts. The Russians continue offensive actions in a number of directions. Russian troops have intensified in the Kharkiv direction in the Lyptsi area, the General Staff reports today in its report. According to them, there is a battle going on there now. Fierce fighting also continues in Vovchansk, where, despite constant enemy attacks with artillery and aviation, the defense forces continue to hold their positions. To strengthen the defenders, soldiers from the 101st Separate Security Brigade of the General Staff of Ukraine were deployed to the area. Meanwhile, the leadership of the Kharkiv region has concerns about a possible Russian offensive in the Soloviove direction. We have certain concerns regarding the Soloviove direction. The Russians can intensify their actions in that direction. We are monitoring their behavior. We will take all measures, in particular, evacuating the population, said the head of the Kharkiv Regional Administration, Singubov. In the Bakhmut sector, the enemy continues to conduct active offensive operations, advancing in the areas of the settlements of Klishchiivka and Bohdanivka. Fierce battles are being waged for control of the city of Chasiv Yar, which is an important strategic point in this direction. A soldier of the 93rd Brigade, Kholodny Yar with the call sign Udub, reported today that the enemy in the area between Ivanivsky and Bogdanivka, through the Stupki-Golubovsky II forest, has already crossed the Siversky-Donets-Donbas channel. The advance of Russian troops is recorded in an area up to 900 meters wide and to a depth of up to 700 meters. Also, according to his data, battles are taking place on the outskirts of the Novi microdistrict. In the southern part of the Canal microdistrict, battles for multi-story buildings continue. The enemy attacks with the support of tanks and armored vehicles. Fighting continues in Klishchiivka with varying degrees of success. In the Avdiivka sector, the movement of enemy forces was noted in the area between the settlements of Soloviove and Berdychi. Intense fighting is taking place in the vicinity of Ocheretuni as the Russians seek to expand their zone of control. The Russians are also trying to advance both north and south from Netailovi, trying to break through the defenses of the Ukrainian defenders and break into Kharkivka. The enemy seeks to capture strategically important heights in this area. To the south, the Russians continue to storm Krasnohorivka. They, using their previously captured positions in the industrial zone of the refractory plant, were able to advance further into the center of the village. The enemy captured the city council building with the help of 2 assault groups. Despite the increased onslaught of the Russians, the defense forces as a whole were able to hold most of their positions, and even carry out a number of counterattacks. At the moment, the Ukrainian contingent of troops is defending itself in a complex of 5-story buildings north of the refractory plant and the city council, where fierce battles are taking place for every house. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.